Good morning, class. In today's video, we're going to be looking at while loops notes 2. In this video, we're going to be asking the question as to whether we should be utilizing a for loop or a while loop, and then thinking about should I use a while loop or a do while loop. All right, so let's look at what we got in here. So a for loop is designed to loop over a segment of code a certain number of times. So it's got some sort of start condition, some sort of stop position, and some sort of step. So you have to think about, with a for loop, generally speaking, you're going to be running to run a certain segment of code X number of times, such as like 1 to 10 going up by 1 each time. So like 10 times in that scenario. Even if you're utilizing variables that you might not know their values, except only in runtime, a for loop makes sense if you want to run the code a certain number of times. A while loop, on the other hand, is just a condition whether it's true or false. Thus, you can make a segment of code run however many times you need it to run. And this is great when you have no idea how many times the code inside the loop needs to run. Because again, it's just running while that condition's true. Now, technically, everything that I do inside of a for loop, I could actually rewrite a for loop as a while loop. Now, of course, it's easier to use a for loop if I'm just trying to run it X number of times, but I'm just saying I could do that. So again, if you're thinking about when to use a for loop versus a while loop, if you want to run something X number of times, for loop is your option. If you want to run your code for an unknown number of times, or just while some sort of condition is true, a while loop is what you want to utilize. Now, when do I use a while loop versus a do while loop? Well, a do while loop always runs the code at least once. And then once it's run that code, it's check the condition at the end to see if it needs to run again. So this is great when you want to run the loop at least once or possibly more times than that. Perfect example of when to use a do while loop is if you're doing input. You're going to ask the user for that input at least once, and then you'll keep repeating that code if the user is inputting something that is not valid. So if you're asking like 1 through 4 and they enter 5. So you're like, no, try again. Okay. So let's look at an example of when a while loop makes more sense than a do while loop. So in a previous lab, we looked at whether a number was a self-divisor or not. So we're going to determine if R, which is just a variable, is a self-divisor. Now, a self-divisor is when all of the digits in the number evenly divide into the whole number. So 124 is a self-divisor because 1, 2, and 4 evenly divide into it. 120 is not because you can't divide by 0. 123 is not a self-divisor because it's not evenly divisible by 2. Now, to solve this, we need to use %d and modulo d and divide by, modulo 10 and divide by 10. Now, I'm not going to use a do while loop because I don't know if I need to run it or not. I'm going to examine the value of R first. So here's my randomly generated number, something from 0 to 99.9. So I'm going to see if R is a self-divisor, and the loop's not going to run if R is less than or equal to 0. So if my random number happened to be 0, I know it's not a self-divisor. My loop doesn't need to run. So you can see the code here. I get the digit, I get the divided by 10, I determine if it goes into it. It's not a self-divisor, I break. If I go through all the way through it, it is a self-divisor. Now, You can use breaks inside while loops. That's perfectly fine. And just like breaks cause you to leave a switch statement, or breaks cause you to leave a for loop, a break will also cause you to leave a while loop or do while loop. Okay, so let's look at the next example. If I was to ask the user to try to guess a random number using a for loop, makes no sense, since I have no idea how many tries it's going to take to guess that number. Also, a do while loop makes more sense than a while loop, because with a do while loop, I know if I'm trying to allow the user to guess some randomly generated number, I need the user to guess at least once, and maybe the user gets it in that one try, not likely, but at least they're going to get at least guaranteed one try. So do while loop makes sense here. So I generate my random number, something from 1 through 10. I use a do while loop, have the user guess the number. If it's not equal to the number, I print out that it's incorrect. My while loop runs again. Eventually, I get out of my while loop, and I'm going to print you guessed right. Something also to note about do while loops is a do while loop, the while loop itself has a semicolon. That's not the case on just a regular while loop. All right, hopefully this helps you understand the ideas of when to use a for loop, a while loop, and a do while loop. Thank you very much, and have a good day.